Hi guys, my name is Viola and I've been interviewing my dad about his 1997 Everest climb. He was on a Nova expedition filming a documentary with climbers such as Ed Viesturs, Ed Viesturs, Pete Athens, and a few other famous climbers. I'm a naturally curious person and I really wanted to interview him about his experience, even though it's 30 years later, and share these stories with all you. So I created a series called My Dad Climbed Everest and I Have Questions. This series is originally made for TikTok, hence the reason it's formatted the way it is. Basically, these videos are compilations of the TikToks, just so you know. If you want to watch them in their original format, I suggest checking out my TikTok, which is linked in the bio. But otherwise, here are the topics we're covering in today's video. First, he tells us in depth how it was to be at the top of Mount Everest and how he felt in those moments. And then he talks about how he felt the spirit of a dead climber was with him on his way up to the summit. It's a really interesting story, so stay tuned for that. There's more on his near-death experience on Everest and how Ed Viesturs almost had to give him a tracheotomy. Scary. Then he talks about the rest of his way down the mountain and how it felt to watch back his near-death experience in the Nova documentary Everest, the Death Zone. Then lastly, he talks about how his life changed after almost dying on Everest and how he felt like he left a piece of himself on the mountain. So enjoy!
When we summited Everest on May 23rd, 1997, I was up there at 7:10 a.m. But before I got to the summit and at the Hillary Step, we ran across the body of Bruce Harrod, who was a South African climber that had died the year before in 1996, and he was at the bottom of the Hillary Step. He'd probably fallen. He's kind of tangled up in some rope, I think, and he was wearing a down suit. And so some of the guys on our climb moved his body off to the side, off the route. But I stepped over him and continued to climb up to the top. But as I went to the top, the last 100 feet or so, there were down feathers from Bruce's down suit that were blowing in the wind, but were kind of following us up to the summit. It was kind of, it was eerie a little bit, but it's also, you could kind of sense Bruce was there in a way, I thought. Maybe I was too hypoxic, I don't know, but I noticed those feathers and they were hitting my face once in a while. It was a pretty powerful moment. It was pretty intense. We got up there about 7:10 a.m., or I did. David Viesturs and Tashi Tenzing and Ann Dorji were the first guys on our team up on this summit, and I could see them. But as I got up there, I kind of looked around, and actually I was frightened, scared, I was intimidated, and I'd been losing my voice when I got up there, and I had a really bad cough and cold before the summit attempt. But I got up there, looked around, and I kind of felt like I'd just been caught with my hand in the cookie jar, and I had to get down. Most accidents occur on the way down from the summit when you're climbing mountains, because you're kind of tired, and it is harder to climb downhill than uphill, believe it or not. It's easier to slip. It's also easier to make mistakes because you're exhausted, mentally exhausted and physically. And so I was scared. I was looking at the ridge we had to climb down. It's pretty steep in sections, and you just don't want to make a mistake. And so bottom line is I realized I wanted to survive and get down. Pretty intense evening on Everest in 97. So we found this and Viola was going through all the Everest boxes of stuff I had from my 97 climb, and we found this trach tube. You'll see it's a shot. Ed cut this to make a trach tube that we were going to use. Here's Ed at base camp in 97 right there, and me joking back at base camp after our summit climb. On the evening of May 23rd in 1997, on the way down, I had to have the Heimlich maneuver done multiple times by Ed. He kept me alive, basically. In desperation, we were starting to prepare to do a tracheotomy to bypass the blockage in my throat. And that trach tube is what Ed made, and we found it the other day. It kind of brought back some memories. So that's the story. And it would have been pretty grim, I think, to have a tracheotomy put in. When we were kind of thinking through it and talking about it, I kind of realized that was probably it was going to be a 50-50 if I survived that night. And I thought it was pretty much, it was going to be over if he put that trach tube in, because that meant, my neck had to be stabilized and things like that. And I was at Camp 3, which is the Lhotse face, and it's about a 45-degree slope. It would have been really hard to climb down with that thing, let alone breathe. And, not in a hospital setting either. Would have been pretty painful and bloody and gruesome, I think. But to make a long story short, we didn't have to do it, obviously. And thanks to Ed and the team, I got back down that mountain. After the choking experience, all I wanted to do was get down, and I'll be up front from the summit to Camp 3, where Ed had to give me the Heimlich maneuver. It was very hard for me to continue to keep going down because I was just so tired. I was so sore too from the Heimlich maneuver. I was kind of bruised here, so I wasn't able to get my full breath in. But I was just exhausted. I had not had a lot of sleep for 3 or 4 days. And not to mention I'd lost a lot. I'd been burning a lot of calories, so I'd lost some weight. I was just exhausted, but I managed to get back down to base camp, obviously. And when I got back down to base camp, it was total relief for me. And when I got back down to base camp, I remember just kind of I just kind of shut down. So, but that's the story. It's like you're watching your own possible death on TV or, in a movie theater. How did it feel to watch the Nova documentary after the climb, obviously? The Nova documentary is called Everest, the Death Zone, about the cognitive functions at high altitude. I've only watched it, I think, like 5 times total. It's something I don't really enjoy watching. It's pretty intense for me to relive all that, especially the evening and early the morning of May 23rd at camp, or May 24th at Camp 3 with Ed Viesturs, giving me the Heimlich maneuver and trying to stay alive. It's not it's nothing that relaxes me, to tell you the truth. Pretty intense. The video is very good. It's very intense. It's pretty cool. It's all documented, and there's a lot of radio traffic that's not in the Nova documentary that I also listened to before they made the documentary with Nova. The radio traffic's pretty intense. Kudos to the team, especially Ed and Guy Cotter and Pete Athens and Dave for helping me stay alive. When I watched the video for the first time, it was very intense, and I can tell you I was sweating, and I think I was kind of nauseated because I was reliving the whole episode and had a lot of stress, to tell you the truth. And even though I knew the outcome, and it's really hard to explain, but it was not a relaxing sit down for me to watch that. How did my life change after my near-death experience? Oh man, that's a good question. And actually, I think it's still evolving. I don't really think about it that often anymore, but after that climb, I thought about it quite a bit. I probably was still in shock for multiple years after the climb. During the episode on Everest, I was thinking I was going to die, and I was thinking I'd become a liability to my climbing team. 2, I was concerned I was going to go to warmer climates after I died. And 3, I did not tell my mom and dad that I loved them when I left for Everest, and I kind of regretted that. I did regret that. And but it also gave me a better understanding or feeling that, we're all going to die. And actually, I'm not afraid to die anymore. I feel more prepared. I had that experience on Everest. And I also kind of walked away from that, probably more spiritual than religious. I came up with when I was on Everest, I'm climbing with, guys that are atheists, guys that are Christians, people that are Buddhists and Hindu up there. And I kind of realized, we're all on our own, we are all on the same kind of path. It doesn't matter what religion you are. Basically, I kind of feel like they're all the same. Now, the reality is, it just kind of make me aware that I'm going to die at some point. Going down that path, I think, is nothing to be afraid of. It's just a journey. It's going to be interesting when it does happen, but I'm not really afraid of it. How do I want to say this? There's always going to be a piece of me up on that mountain. It is part of me now, and I laid it all on the line to get up and get back down. And it's changed me in a way, and I don't know how it's changed me, but part of my soul's up there, and I feel like I'm mentally and spiritually attached to that mountain, but especially Nepal. And there's something about that place that I truly love, and I get a lot of energy from it when I see it and when I'm there. And I think that's what I mean by that. After I pass on or whatever, I think at least I can see my spirit or something flying around Camp 3, where Ed was giving me the Heimlich maneuver for a while, for a little bit, and kind of re-experiencing the Camp 3 moment, unfortunately, because that place, it was very intense at Camp 3 for me, and it's probably changed my life in multiple ways, which I can't even fathom yet. But I've always thought after I die, I'll probably fly around Nepal a little bit and check out the mountain.